Dear friends, today I am presenting before you a talk on the establishment of early Yamato state of Japan. There are two different opinions about the establishment of this earliest political entity of Japan, mythological and historical opinions. We shall first pick up the mythological opinions relating to this subject. There are two major works by the Japanese authors written in the 8th century during Nara period. Kojiki, compiled in 712, and Nihon Shoki, compiled in 720 AD. They talk about the creation of the Japanese islands and how the Japanese early Yamato state came into existence. The mythology says, originally in the universe there was one God. Later, two gods were added to him. Then there were 5 generations of gods and goddesses. In the 7th generation of these gods and goddesses, 2 major figures of deities appeared on the scene. Izanagi, a male deity, and Izanami, a female deity. The other gods commissioned them to create land, and according to this advice, Izanagi and Izanami came down below the heaven. It was a floating bridge. They were standing on it. They came down, and below they saw all water all around. Izanagi had a lance in his hand. He dipped it in the sea water and took it up. A few drops of water were dropped into the sea, and a drop of water congealed and turned into an island. It was named Onogoro Island. Standing on it, Izanagi and Izanami, they decided to create other islands and gods and goddesses. They got married to each other, and after that they created other islands and gods and goddesses. When Izanami was giving birth to the god of fire, she happened to be badly burned. Her body became so ugly that she didn't want to show her face to Izanagi. She left this world and went into a world of darkness. Izanagi, not finding her around, looked for her and entered that world of darkness. It was a cave infested by the spirits. He went into it, was able to see Izanami, but she did not want to show her face, her body to him. When he tried to see her, she felt ashamed and asked the other spirits around to kill him, so that the memory of her ugly appearance did not remain in his mind as a future memory. The spirits tried to kill Izanagi and he fled from the place. He moved out of the cave and put a big stone on its mouth so that these spirits could not harm him. When he came out, his body, as the Japanese mythology says, and their religion also says, that his body had become impure because he had come in contact with a sickly person, a bleeding body. To purify himself, he went to the nearby river and took bath in it. When he was washing his left eye from the water that fell below, the sun goddess, in Japanese they say Amaterasu o Mikami, the sun goddess came into existence. When he washed his right eye, the moon god came into existence. When he washed his nose, the god of storm, Susanoo, was born. He removed his other ornaments and dresses which had become impure, unclean, and from these ornaments other clothes, etc., many other gods and goddesses came into existence. Now, Izanagi wanted to take leave of them. He assigned certain duties to all these three gods. To sun goddess Amaterasu o Mikami, he assigned the task of taking care, looking after the heaven, give light to the world during the daytime. To the moon god, he assigned the duty of giving light to the world during night time. To Susanoo, he said he should rule over the earth. And finally, he gave his necklace as an authority to Amaterasu, the sun goddess. Thereafter, he departed. Susanoo, the god of storm, was not happy. He felt he had been put to shame by asking him to live on the earth. Not satisfied with it, he decided to settle the score with Amaterasu himself. From the earth, he went to the heaven and started creating problems for the sun goddess. He trampled her fields, he went to her cottage and started creating many problems. Amaterasu, not willing to enter into conflict with her brother, she moved into a cave. Her entry into the cave resulted in darkness all over the world. The other gods and goddesses became worried, and now they planned how to bring Amaterasu out of the cave. They made a plan and according to this plan, they made a big 8 feet high mirror, put it outside the cave, and then they started dancing, yelling. They brought crows, they started crowing to indicate that the dawn was approaching. Seeing a sparkling, a dazzling figure in the mirror, Amaterasu was surprised who this lady was. And when she was just thinking about it, standing at the entrance of the cave, other gods and goddesses, they put a rope behind her so that she could not go back into the cave. Amaterasu came outside the cave. Light appeared in the world again. The other gods and goddesses, they punished Susanoo and asked him to leave the heaven and never to come to it. Susanoo was thus expelled from heaven. He landed on the earth at a place called Silla in Korea. From Silla, he came to the Japanese island by boat and reached the province of Izumo. Feeling thirsty and looking for water, he went to a river, and there he saw a pair of chopsticks coming down with the stream water. He felt there were some human beings, some people living on the hilltop. He moved upward, and at the hilltop he found a couple, an old man and an old lady, in a very sad mood. They were very gloomy. Being asked why they were so sad, the old man replied that every year a big snake with 8 heads used to come to him and devour one of his daughters. Out of his total 8 daughters, 7 had already been devoured, and now it was the time for the 8th daughter. It was the time for the snake to come, and that his arrival would mean the death of his daughter. Susanoo, wanting to solve their problem, asked the old man to make a fence around with 8 gates and put big jars full of wine at each gate. This big snake drank the wine, became intoxicated, and in this state of intoxication, Susanoo killed him. In his body, Susanoo found a big sword, which later became a part of the imperial regalia. After the big snake was killed, Susanoo married the daughter of the old man and started looking after the task of establishing an empire in Japan. He engaged in certain conflicts with the tribes already existing around. But the situations were not very appropriate for the establishment of a state and a society. Goddess Amaterasu, looking at the earthly situation, felt that things were not going in the right direction, so she sent her grandson Ninigi to the earth to establish an empire. Ninigi landed at a place called Takachihou in northern part of Kyushu. He entered into military operations with the tribes around, with the kingdom chiefs around. Ninigi also started subduing the tribes around to establish an empire. He got married, and his son, who later came to be known as Emperor Jimmu or Jimmu Tenno, he continued the task of subduing the rebellious lords and establishing the empire. From southern part of Kyushu, he started moving upward and then moved into Honshu Island, partly by land and partly by sea, subduing the tribes over there, and went to the present city of Kyoto, at that time known as Yamato. Yamato is a province. Its exact location is not certain, but it appears it was somewhere near the present city of Kyoto, Nara or Osaka. Of course, there does exist a place named as Yamato on the border of Osaka and Nara. Here, Jimmu established his state, then he moved further north, defeated Tsuchigumo or earth spiders, also known as the Ainu people. He was able to subdue some of them, but did not go up to the Hokkaido island and came back. He established his capital in Yamato, and this came to be known as the Yamato state. It is said he established this state in 660 BC. This date has been recognized by the authors of Kojiki and also Nihon Shoki. The government of Japan also celebrated 2600th anniversary of the foundation of Yamato state in the year 1940, which means that the Japanese government also recognizes that the Yamato state came into existence in 660 BC. This Yamato state continued being the capital of Japan up till the 6th century or so. Thereafter, Asuka became the capital city of Japan. This is what our mythological opinions tell about the establishment of Yamato state. Historians, of course, do not fully agree with the mythological opinions expressed by the Japanese writers. It is not to be denied that Emperor Jimmu, who established the Yamato state, he was a historical figure. But the date, that is 660 BC, is still being considered, and it has become a matter of controversy. The historians feel that the Yamato state came to have a stability around 3rd century AD or so. The historians feel the Japanese mythology is giving some exaggerations about the early emperors of Japan. This chronology seems to be giving an age of more than 100 years, around 109 years, to the early emperors of Japan, which does not seem to be true. Also, certain facts, certain stories given in Kojiki, these are found in Chinese books also. This kind of stories, Izanagi and Izanami, are found in certain legends relating to the Polynesian countries. These kind of stories are found in the works of some Polynesian countries and also certain island countries on the eastern side of Australia. As there have been a large number of migrants to Japan from the Asian continent and also from the South Asian regions, it appears these stories were just grafted on the Kojiki or the Japanese mythology. The historians feel, when they talk about the historical development of Japan as a state, they talk about the Paleolithic age, Mesolithic age and Neolithic age. To put it from the Japanese terminology side, Jomon Jidai, Yayoi Jidai and Kofun Jidai. Jomon Jidai seems to be continuing from earliest times up till the 8000 to 5000 years BC. During Jomon Jidai, we see a large number of people inhabiting Japan who had arrived into these islands from different directions, north, west and south. These were living in a state of hunting age, killing the beast, wild animals and then eating also the natural fruits, nuts, etc. They made a pottery. These pots were having rope designs. Beautiful designs were put on the pots, and it is because of these rope designs that this period came to be known as Jomon Jidai. Japanese society had not up till now reached a better stage of civilization. During 3rd century BC, there were imperialistic wars in China, and to save their lives and property, their honor, the Chinese people moved into Japanese islands. They brought with them Chinese thinking, Chinese culture and various aspects of Japanese civilization. They entered the Japanese islands, and this influx of population continued up till the 2nd century BC. These people knew about agricultural techniques. They brought with them horse and cow. They were also keeping dogs as pets. They were able to melt iron and bronze. They used appliances, swords, halberds. They knew agricultural techniques and were able to grow rice. They melted iron and bronze and various appliances, and hunting implements were made with the help of these iron and bronze. Swords, halberds, etc. were also made with iron and bronze. During this period, there was quite considerable development in Japan, and this was primarily because of the Chinese people coming from the continent and bringing with them the Chinese civilization. This period was followed from 3rd century AD onwards by Kofun Jidai, which continued up till 5th or 6th century AD. This is called Kofun Jidai, Kofun meaning the tomb. This is also known as tomb culture. Tomb culture entered China from Central Asia, and then along with the influx of population from the continent, tomb culture appeared in Japan also. Like the Central Asian countries, when the dead bodies of the emperors were buried, their immediate subordinates, their servants, and items of their daily use, clothing, ornaments, swords, mirrors, necklaces, such things were placed by their side. The idea was that when the emperor goes to the next world, there should be some people to serve him over there, and he must be having all those things with him which he needed during this world. Therefore, all these things were buried along with the dead body of the emperor. But it was a very unfortunate situation for the families of those people, subordinates or the employees of the emperor, whose families were left behind. It was a tragic scene for them to see them being buried alive. In view of the misfortunes or the tragedies inflicted on the families, this practice of burying the employees or the servants alive was stopped during the 6th century, and it was replaced by clay figures of the servants and the employees, which were buried along with the dead body of the emperor. Gradually, the situations changed further, and around 7th century or so, this system of making tombs was discarded by the Japanese people. The tombs that were made were very decorative, sometimes very big in size. The tomb of Emperor Nintoku is indeed a great historical monument of today. By the time it was 6th century AD, Japanese society had developed into a well organized society and with a stable government, laws and various ordinances, a government structure, system of taxation, census, etc. And we feel by this time the establishment of Yamato state had come to a state of completion. This was political development of Yamato state. Looking at it from outside. But we also need to see how the society developed internally, its social structure, administrative structure, etc. In the earliest times, as we see, as the historians also believe, the human civilization, human race developed in Japan thousands and thousands years ago. In the prehistoric times, it is felt that the man might have entered these islands about 100,000 years ago. Thereafter, the society gradually continued passing through hunting stage, the Jomon Jidai, Yayoi Jidai, and then Kofun Jidai. Society in early times was just divided into certain clans. The head of the clan was ruling the group of families which made this clan. He was called Kami Uji no Kami, that is, head of the clan. He governed, he controlled, he managed all the members of the clan who obeyed him. All these people, they respected, they revered a deity. It was a clan deity. This clan deity was known as Ujigami. This clan, being like a group of families, started increasing in its number with the increase of the family members. Gradually, the Uji no Kami started increasing his power, his wealth, and the area under his control. This is how the clan leader, the chieftain, started entering into wars along with the neighboring clans, and he started increasing his area of power and authority. Various clans submitted to his authority, and thus the number of people, the territory under his control increased. This gradually became a kingdom. Chinese records tell us earlier Japan was a country of 100 or more countries. When Empress Himiko was ruling over this country, that is Japan, it was a country of 100 or more kingdoms. This is how the earlier political organizations, political entities came into existence, and gradually these political entities coming under the authority of one chieftain who in course of time happened to be a person from the Sun line, that is one of the descendants of Amaterasu. This person gradually established his authority over the rest of the kingdoms, the tribes, and then it became the Yamato state. This was the social development. But besides these Ujis, the clans, there were other groups also. There were Beis, B-E, Bay. That is, these were guilds of the workers, people belonging to one profession. For example, weavers, carpenters, goldsmith, ironsmith, fishermen, peasants, and other such people, they formed their groups, and these groups were called Bay. The number of these people belonging to the Bay community was the largest. The Uji clan was only the ruling class. Uji was a class, Bay was also a class of people, and in the third category there was a class of Yatsuko. They were slaves. These slaves were associated with the Uji family, doing their household works. They were just like slaves, completely depending on the Uji family. These people could be sold, they could be made free, but The servants as such, they themselves they were not allowed to leave the Uji family. They were just slaves and nothing more than that. This was the third community in the early social setup of Japan. That means, the early Japanese society was divided into three groups: the Uji class, the Bei and the Yatsuko. In course of time, there was social and political development of Japan, and Japan developed into a well established state with a political authority, system of laws and administration, taxation, census, etc. All this happened to be completed by the time it was 6th or 7th century. Thereafter starts the Asuka period. This was the establishment, or this is how the establishment of Yamato state took place. During the 3rd century and 2nd century BC, a large number of people from the continent moved into the Japanese islands. These Chinese people brought along with them various aspects of Chinese civilization, like the system of administration and literature, etc. The people coming from the Asian continent, from China and Korea, they belonged to the Mongol race. There were people who came from the north, from the side of Siberia via Sakhalin, etc. These people belonged to Caucasian race, but when they entered the Japanese islands, in course of time they came to be called as Ainu people. They occupied a large territory on the Honshu island, and as they were living in earthen pits, they also were known as Tsuchi Gumo. Quite a large number of people came from the southern regions also on the southern side of Japan, and they were called people belonging to the Malayan blood or the Malayan race. So, three kinds of communities, three kinds of races, that is Mongolians proper primarily, the Ainu in the north, and Malayan people belonging to the Malayan blood. They entered from the southern side and they were inhabiting Japanese islands, and they had started inhabiting these islands from the earliest times.